Hello, I'm Claire and I'm going to show you how to do this technique. Today this technique is mosaic bonding. Well, that's my name for it, but it's chopped up bits of fabric that are bonded to a backing fabric and then stitched over, and you get this lovely effect where it really sort of smudges the fabric. So I'm actually going to show you how to do that today. So what you need is a piece of Bondaweb, and I've got a 2-inch square piece here, and I'm going to iron it to a piece of medium weight calico, but of course you can iron it to whatever fabric you want to. So with Bondaweb, always remember rough side down. So as I feel that, that's the rough side, I'm going to place that on top of my calico and iron it. Now I know it has a paper backing, but I don't want any accidents and I don't want the back of my iron to be dirty. So I'm going to place a piece of baking parchment over the top, and with a hot dry iron give it a firm wiggle and lift it up. Okay, now because Bondaweb is actually quite pale in colour, what I need to do is just mark the corners with a pencil so that when I remove it I can actually see where the corners of the Bondaweb are. So mark that, and once it's cooled down you can actually peel it off. Okay, and it should peel off really smoothly, like you're pulling off a plaster or a wax strip, but if there's any resistance or any tugging and it's not coming off smoothly, then iron it again. You haven't actually ironed it enough. So lift that off. I see that's not ironed properly, there's a bit of tugging, so I'm just going to place my baking parchment over the top and just iron that bit there. I was obviously a little bit hasty in doing that. So let it cool down a little bit and then it should just peel off. There we go, and it's all nice and smooth. Now what I've done, I've cut some strips of Dupion silk. Dupion silk is actually a really lovely weight of fabric to use for this technique, but of course you can use other fabrics. You could use cotton or synthetic Dupion. Anything too fine, when you iron it down on the Bondaweb, the little specks of glue from the Bondaweb will come through your fabric. So I just quite like something substantial, a nice weight. And I've cut some strips that are 1/2 centimetre wide, and okay, roughly sort of this long. It's difficult to gauge how long a strip, but you can always cut yourself another strip if you run out. And I've just chosen 3 colours. I find for this technique that 3 colours work for this sort of size square. There's nothing to stop you using more colours another time, but for this demonstration I'll just use 3 colours. Tonally they're quite different as well, so that when I chop it all up it's not going to blend together. So I'm actually going to use some very sharp scissors and work very close to the square, and you need to just cut little pieces at different angles so that they're like triangles and various shapes really. And can you see how close I'm working to the piece? And that's the key really to this technique. If you work incredibly close to the square, what you'll find is that they land just where you want them to be. So remember your pencil corners, and what you need to do is make sure that you go up to, and it doesn't matter if you go slightly over the edges of the square. What you do have to ensure with this technique is that every piece comes into contact with the Bondaweb underneath, because when you iron it you don't want your pieces jumping around. So I'm working my way, and what you're trying to gauge is how to cover this square by 1/3. It's very tempting to put too much on actually. So what I'm actually going to do is, oops, that's just flicked over. People do say to me, wouldn't it be quicker to actually chop all the pieces and then place them? Well, I find that they all stick together that way, so I actually like to chop as I need them. So I'm going to go on with my second colour. Now if I do need to add any of my first colour, I can always come back. It's not the end of the world if I add a bit more at the end. So my next colour, I'm going to add this one. When you've got quite a long piece, just pop it in your hand like that so that you're not trailing it and knocking all the bits that you've just chopped. So just cut these bits, and I'm still working really close to my piece of work, and that way hopefully they'll land where I want them to go. Oops. Now it doesn't matter if they overlap a little bit, as long as some part of every piece is in contact with the background, then it will actually stick when you iron it. Oops, a little bit lively, just need to knock that. It's handy to have some tweezers handy as well. Whoops, there we go. I thought I could get away without them. There we go, and then the last colour. Oops. Now there may be some little gaps of calico visible, and that's okay, because what you can do is when you stitch it, you can actually stitch over those so they won't remain plain bits of calico. It's a good way of experimenting with colour as well, using colours that you're not sure if they work well together. And if you do like the combinations that you use, it's a good idea just to keep a little record in a notebook. Nearly there. You can understand why I haven't done a bigger square. Okay, just going to place that there. I think I perhaps could have done with another couple of little pink bits there, but we'll just do it like that. And because there's exposed Bondaweb there, if I iron that without any coverage, I'd get a dirty iron, so definitely use the baking parchment at this point. Place that on top, put the iron on top and give it a firm wiggle. And there we are, we're all ironed and ready to sew it. Right, so here's my piece of mosaic bonding ready to be stitched, and I need to put it in a hoop because it's a single layer of fabric, and if I went to machine embroider that without putting it in a hoop, it would actually go everywhere. So I'm actually going to use a good old-fashioned embroidery hoop, and I'm going to slacken the screw. Oops, going the wrong way. There we go. And take the inner hoop out, pop the outer hoop underneath, pop the inner hoop in, and push that inner hoop down. Hang on to the inner hoop and just pull it up nice and tight, because what you're trying to do is actually create a canvas nice and tight. So I'm just pulling it upright. I find that if I actually pull my fabric up at right angles, the inner hoop doesn't pop out. And then when I'm done, just make sure it's really tight by checking the screw. And there we are, ready to free machine embroider. Right, so we're going to machine embroider on the Janome 230 DC. And there will be a link in the description, so if you want some more information about this lovely machine, you'll be able to pick up information there. So I've prepared it for free motion embroidery. So we've got this great table that comes with the machine, and before I put that on, I've actually dropped the teeth or lowered the feed dogs, and on this particular machine there's a little slide underneath here, and you just slide that across and the teeth drop down. What I've also popped on here is the free machine embroidery foot. I haven't got the open-toed one this time, but it's clear, and so you can see what you're doing, and I've attached that to the machine. The thread that we're using today, I'm going to use Madeira thread, and the type that it is 9842, and they have some beautiful colours. Let me just show you some of the colours in here. So we've got lovely golds and greens, but I particularly like that colour. Look at that. Oh no, hang on, wrong one. This one. Look at that. That's just delicious. Anyway, I thought we'd go with a turquoise. For this particular sample, I quite like using one of the colours that I've used as my chopped up bit of fabric. And I know it's a different blue, but I thought turquoise would really stand out. So I have threaded that up as normal. I haven't touched my tension, and the thread that I've got in the bobbin is a bobbin fill, and the weight of the bobbin fill that I'm using today is 60, and it's a polyester bobbin fill. My needle is a size 80, and I find that actual combination does work for me. When you do free machine embroider with metallic thread, you do just need to be careful of your speed. I do think sometimes when we set off initially, we have no fear and we go a little bit fast. But I'm going to get this machined, so I'm going to pop this under here. Now, you're probably thinking that's not going to go under. But on this machine, if you put your hand under the presser foot lever, push it up again, it's got what we call a double lift, and that just slides under. And you'll be surprised at how many machines have got that feature, and perhaps you don't realise it. So with machine embroidery, I always like to bring the bobbin thread up before I start. So I pop my needle in using this button and bring it back up again and pull my bobbin thread. And if you can't quite see what you're doing, you can just move it forwards so that you can pull up your bobbin thread. I know because it's bobbin fill, it's a different colour and you can't quite see it against the calico. Line it back up, pop your needle back in, and then you're ready to lower the presser foot and off we go. So the idea of this technique is just to do a few stitches so that you're stitching down the bits of fabric that aren't stuck down with a Bondaweb. So we don't want frantic stitching, we don't want to cover it all up. We spent ages doing that lovely chopping, and I'm just gently working my way down the piece. Now when you come to a bit of calico that's exposed with no fabric on it, then you can just do a little bit of stitching on it. So I'm just making my way down, and I'm just going to do a little bit of wiggling there, and then I'm going to work my way backwards. And what I love about this technique is how the fabric tends to smudge. It's just lovely as you go through it, because the pieces are quite small. When you start stitching through it, they smudge together, and it reminds me really of pastels, oil pastels, when you do an oil pastel picture. So I'm just steadily sewing, and I'm not doing too much sewing, just going from side to side. Right, now that's finished, I'm going to take that out. So get the needle out and cut that top and bottom, and there we are. There's the finished article. So you might think to yourself, oh, well, what would I use that for? I think it's just a really lovely technique. It makes it look all very nice and smudgy, great for texture, great for backgrounds, great for things like a topiary tree. So on this keyring, I actually used that technique. And how I did it was I actually cut my Bondaweb into circles first, and then actually just chopped up those little bits and actually had those little balls there. And another way of using it was when I did a fascinator. I actually bonded some of this on a piece of silk, cut them into pieces, and then that's what I've used in the inside of my flower. So it's really quite versatile. So it'd be interesting to just have a play, have a go and see what you think. If you like this video, then please give us the thumbs up and subscribe so that you don't miss any more videos. And I'll see you soon.